I still remember the exact moment my father looked at me like I was a stranger, like I didn't belong in the same room as him. It was his 60th birthday party, a huge one. Crystal chandeliers, expensive wine, people dressed like they walked out of a magazine. The kind of night he had waited his whole life for. And me? I stood there at the edge of the room, feeling like a mistake he never managed to erase. "Are you really wearing that?" he said, his voice low, but sharp enough to cut straight through me. I looked down at my dress. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't inappropriate. It was just me. Simple. Elegant. Not loud enough for his world. "I thought it was fine," I replied quietly. He leaned closer, his jaw tightening. "You don't fit here." "Not tonight. Go home before you embarrass me." For a second, I thought I misheard him. My own father asking me to leave his birthday party? "Dad!" I tried, my voice already cracking. "I'm your daughter." He didn't even hesitate. "Exactly. And I'm asking you to leave." That word was echoed in my chest like something breaking. Around us, people pretended not to listen, but I could feel their eyes. Their judgment. Their curiosity. I had always been the different one in his life. Not polished enough. Not successful enough. Not enough. My younger half-sister, Ashley, stood across the room, sipping champagne like she owned the place. Perfect dress. Perfect smile. Perfect daughter. Everything I wasn't. "Don't make a scene," my father added coldly. "Just go quietly." That's when something inside me shifted. Because he didn't know. He had no idea why I had really come that night. I swallowed the lump in my throat and forced a small smile. "You're right," I said softly. "I wouldn't want to embarrass you." Relief flashed across his face. That hurt more than anything. I turned toward the door, my heels clicking against the marble floor, each step heavier than the last, but halfway there. My hand tightened around the small envelope in my clutch. The one thing that could change everything? Slowly, I turned back around. "Actually, Dad," I said, my voice louder this time, steady in a way it had never been before. The room began to quiet. "I think you should hear this first." And just like that, the entire night was about to fall apart. The second I spoke, it was like the air itself shifted. Conversations slowed. Laughter faded. Glasses stopped midair. My father's expression tightened instantly. "What are you doing?" he hissed under his breath, stepping closer to me like he could physically stop whatever was about to happen. I didn't answer him. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. I turned slightly, making sure my voice carried. Just enough for the room to hear me, but not loud enough to sound. Dramatic, calm, controlled, intentional. "You've spent your whole life building this image," I said, looking directly at him. The perfect businessman, the perfect father, the perfect man. A few people exchanged glances. I noticed Ashley's smile slowly fading. "And I've spent my whole life," I continued, my fingers tightening around the envelope, trying to understand why I was never enough to be part of it. "Stop this!" my father muttered, his voice now edged with panic. "This is not the time." "No," I said quietly. "This is exactly the time." That silence? It got heavier, because now people were listening, really listening. I took a slow breath, feeling my heart pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. But I didn't stop. "You told me to leave before I embarrassed you," I said, my voice steady. "But the truth is, you've been embarrassed of me my entire life." A woman near the back gasped softly. My father's face flushed red. "That's enough." But it wasn't. Not even close. "You never came to my graduation," I went on. "You missed every birthday after I turned 12. You told people I was difficult. A phase. Something you'd rather not explain." I saw it then, the discomfort spreading across the room, the cracks forming in his perfect image. And tonight, I added, my voice lowering just slightly. "You asked me to leave like I was nothing." I said stop. He snapped. Louder this time. Heads turned fully now. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled. Not a happy smile, the kind of smile that comes when something inside you finally breaks free. "You're right, Dad," I said softly. "I should leave?" Relief flickered across his face again, but this time it didn't last. "After all," I continued, slowly pulling the envelope out of my clutch, "I wouldn't want to ruin your big night without giving you the gift I brought." Confusion replaced the anger on his face. "What is that?" he asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. I held it up between my fingers. "It's something you've been avoiding for 32 years. That got everyone's attention. Even Ashley stepped closer now, her expression no longer perfect, just uneasy. My father's eyes locked onto the envelope like it was something dangerous. "Don't," he said quietly. "Not angry this time? Warning." And that's when I knew. He already had a feeling. "You see," I said, turning slightly so the room could see me, "I used to think I was the problem. That I wasn't good enough. That may be. If I tried harder, dressed better, acted differently." My voice caught for a split second, but I pushed through it. "You'd finally be proud of me." The silence was unbearable now. "But then," I said, my fingers slowly sliding under the seal of the envelope, "I found out something that changed everything." My father took a step forward. "Give me that," he said, reaching out. I stepped back. "No." That one word landed harder than anything I'd said all night, because he wasn't in control anymore. "You don't get to control this," I told him, my voice calm but unshakable. "Not this time." His jaw tightened. I could see the fear now. Real fear. And it felt different. Not satisfying yet, but close. "I spent years believing your version of the story," I continued, "until a few months ago. When I started asking questions." Ashley shook her head slightly. "What is she talking about?" She whispered to someone beside her. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on him, and when I got the answers, I said slowly, I realized something. I paused. Let it sit. Let it build. Then I finished. "You were never ashamed of me." I saw his breath hitch. "You were afraid of the truth." The room felt like it shrank, like every single person was leaning in without moving. My father's voice dropped to almost nothing. "You don't know what you're talking about." But I did, and for the first time in my life, he knew I did. I slid the paper halfway out of the envelope, and that's exactly why, I said, my voice now steady, sharp, undeniable. "You never wanted me here tonight." No one spoke. No one moved. And then I pulled the document out completely, and everything was about to change. The moment I fully pulled the document out of the envelope, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't dramatic on its own, just a stack of papers. Black text, official stamps, faded signatures. But I watched my father's face change instantly the second he saw it. All the color drained out of him. "No," he whispered, barely audible. "No, no, no." That reaction alone told me everything. Because this wasn't surprise. It was recognition. I let the silence stretch, feeling every pair of eyes in the room locked onto us. The chandeliers above us suddenly felt too bright, too harsh, like they were exposing something that had been buried for decades. "You remember this, don't you?" I asked quietly. My father didn't answer. That was answer enough. Ashley stepped forward slightly, her voice shaking. "What is it?" I finally looked at her, and for the first time that night, I didn't feel invisible. "This," I said, holding the papers up slightly, "is a DNA report. Cord verified. Sealed records. 32 years old." A murmur spread through the crowd like wildfire. I saw confusion, shock, interest, people leaning in closer, hungry for something real behind the polished masks they all wore. My father's voice finally broke through. "Put that away," he said sharply. But it didn't carry the same authority anymore. It sounded desperate now. "You don't understand what you're doing." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I replied. My fingers tightened around the paper. "I understand why you never looked at me like I was your daughter," I continued. "I understand why you kept me away from your public life. I understand why you always made sure I stayed in the background, hidden." I stepped forward, and he stepped back. That tiny movement didn't go unnoticed. You spent my entire life, I said, my voice trembling but controlled, treating me like I was something shameful you had to tolerate. My throat tightened, but I refused to stop. But the truth is, I swallowed hard. You knew I wasn't your biological daughter from the beginning. A collective gasp spread across the room. Ashley's hand flew to her mouth. My father finally snapped. That's ENOUGH. He shouted, "You are not going to stand here and destroy my family with lies?" But I didn't flinch this time, because this wasn't a lie. It was the thing he had been running from for over 3 decades. You want to call it a lie? I said softly. Fine, then explain this. I held up the document again, flipping it open. This test was ordered after your wife, my mother, passed away, I continued. She left instructions. Very specific instructions. That I should be tested if anything ever happened to her. The room went silent again. Even the air felt heavier. And guess what? I said. I looked straight at him. I wasn't yours. That sentence hit like a physical blow. A woman in the back actually whispered, "Oh my God." My father looked like he might collapse. "That's not possible," he said. But his voice had lost all strength. "She would never." "She did," I interrupted. "And you knew." "You've known since I was a child." Ashley shook her head rapidly. "This doesn't make sense." "Dad, tell her she's lying." But he couldn't even look at her. That's when I realized something deeper. Ashley didn't know either. She really believed this perfect version of our family. But me? I grew up in the cracks of it. "You didn't raise me because you loved me," I said quietly. "You raised me because you had no choice." My father's fists clenched. "You think this gives you the right to humiliate me?" he said, his voice shaking with rage now. "On my birthday? In front of all these people?" I tilted my head slightly, and for the first time, I felt something sharp and cold inside me settle into place. "No," I said. "You did that to yourself when you told me to leave before I embarrassed you." A silence so deep followed that I could hear someone's glass shaking in their hand. Then I said the line I had been holding back since I walked into that room. "But what you don't know," I added slowly, "is why I really came tonight." His eyes narrowed. Because now, fear was mixing with anger. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. I took one step closer, and this time, I lowered my voice. "So many years ago," I said, "before you decided I was something to hide, there was a clause in my mother's will." His expression froze. That was the moment everything shifted again. Because I saw it, he knew exactly what I meant. "No," he whispered. But I continued anyway. "If anything ever happened to her," I said, "and if the truth about my identity was confirmed, I would legally become the sole heir to her private trust." The room erupted in shocked whispers. Ashley looked like the ground had disappeared under her feet. "That's not true," my father said quickly, too quickly. "That money, those assets belong to this family." I shook my head slowly. "No," I said, "they belong to me." That was when he lost control. "You planned this," he shouted suddenly, pointing at me. "You came here to steal everything from me?" I didn't even blink. "No," I said calmly. "I came here because you told me to leave before I embarrassed you." I paused, then added quietly, "I just wanted to make sure you knew who you were talking to before I did." And that's when I opened the final page. The clause, the signature, the confirmation, and the entire room realized this wasn't just a family secret. It was a financial collapse waiting to happen. The moment I turned that final page, everything in the room changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic at first. It was worse. It was quiet realization. That kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels dangerous. My father stared at the document like it was burning a hole through him. His hands, which had always been so controlled, so powerful in every room he entered, were shaking now. This isn't happening," he whispered. But it was, and everyone in that room could feel it. I looked around slowly. at the guests, at the glass chandeliers, at the perfectly arranged celebration that suddenly felt like a stage built on lies. And then I looked back at him. "You told me to leave before I embarrassed you," I said quietly. My voice didn't shake anymore. It was steady now, clear. And I almost did. Ashley was crying now, but silently. Like she didn't want to ruin the image of perfection even in collapse. She looked at me like she didn't know me at all. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered suddenly. "If this is real, why didn't anyone tell me?" My chest tightened for a second, because that question wasn't just about money. It was about identity. I softened my voice just slightly. "Because I didn't know you were kept in the dark too." That made her flinch more than anything else. My father stepped forward suddenly. "Stop this," he said, but it was weaker now. "All of yous, stop listening to her. This is manipulation. This is truth." I interrupted him. For the first time, I cut him off so easily it surprised even me. "This is truth you buried," I said. "For 32 years. A man from the legal team near the back cleared his throat carefully. "Sir," he said, hesitant. "If this document is authentic and the trust conditions are what she states, then legally." "Don't you dare finish that sentence," my father snapped. But it was already too late. Everyone understood. The shift had already happened. The power wasn't his anymore. I felt it settle in the room like gravity changing direction. For so long, I had been the outsider in his life. The mistake, the embarrassment, the thing he wanted to erase. But now, I was the center of every gaze in that room. Not because I wanted attention, but because the truth demanded it. "I didn't come here to destroy you," I said softly. That made him laugh once sharp, broken. "Oh, really?" he said bitterly. "Then what do you call this?" I looked at him for a long moment, and I felt something inside me finally settle. Not anger anymore, not pain, just clarity. "I call it consequences," I said. That word landed heavier than anything else I had said that night. He went silent. For the first time. He had no immediate response. I stepped closer, lowering my voice just enough so only he could hear me now. "You spent my entire life trying to keep me small," I said. "Trying to make me doubt myself. Trying to make me believe I was lucky just to exist near you." His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. "Because he couldn't. And I did," I continued, my voice cracking slightly now. "For a long time. I believed you." I took a breath, then added, "But tonight when you told me to leave before I embarrassed you, something finally broke." I looked up at him, and it wasn't me. For a second, I thought he might yell again, or collapse into anger. But instead, he just looked tired, old, like the weight of everything he had built was finally crushing him. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. That question hit differently, because it wasn't a demand anymore. It was surrender. I looked around the room again, at all the people who had once only seen me as an accessory to his life. Now they were waiting for my answer. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt present. "I don't want your apology," I said. A few people looked surprised. "I don't want your money," I continued. That made Ashley's breath catch. "I don't want your approval," I added. My voice grew steadier. "I stopped wanting all of that a long time ago." I stepped back slightly, and then I said the final truth out loud. "I just wanted you to acknowledge that I existed as more than your embarrassment." Silence. Complete silence. Even the music in the background felt like it had disappeared. My father looked at me for a long time, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker in his expression. Not pride, not control. Something closer to regret. But it came too late. "I acknowledge it," he said quietly. The room barely heard him, but I did, and that was enough. I nodded slowly, not because it fixed anything, but because it ended something. Then I turned slightly, looking at the guests one last time. "This isn't a story about revenge," I said softly. A few people shifted uncomfortably. "It's a story about truth finally being louder than silence." I placed the document back into the envelope. And for the first time that night, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't breaking. I wasn't the girl being told to leave. I was the one choosing to walk away. I turned toward the exit again. But this time, no one stopped me. No one asked me to leave. No one embarrassed me, because the embarrassment had already happened, and it wasn't mine. As I reached the door, I paused just once, not to look back at him, but to let the moment settle. Then I whispered the final line to myself. Now you know who you were talking to. And I walked out, not as his daughter he tried to erase, but as the woman who finally took her life back. And behind me, the room stayed silent. Because some truths don't just end conversations. They end entire versions of a family,